Everyone says we must be fearless. Our movies, our stories, and our parents teach us to be fearless. We sometimes behave as if we are fearless. Indeed, it is important to have courage and to be fearless. But really, we all know that we all have some fears within us. I was taught by my mother that fear is a reality, and we need to accept that we all have fears. But we need to learn how to deal with fear. That is important. My mother told me many stories of my grandfather Gandhi. We called him Bapuji. I learned many lessons from these stories. The one important lesson was about how to deal with our fears. At first, I used to feel embarrassed to say that I am afraid of the dark and of snakes and other creepy animals. But then my mother told me how Bapuji too was afraid of the dark and of creepy animals. That made me feel much better about myself. But my mother told me a story which I have never forgotten. This was the story of Bapuji and his fear of snakes. Here is the story in my words. Many years ago, when Bapuji was 35 years old and Kastuba, his wife, was the same age, they took a very important decision which affected the rest of their and their children's lives. They were living in South Africa at the time. They had a beautiful house in the city where they were very comfortable. They had access to water in their home, they had electricity, and there were shops and other facilities close by, and above all, there were no snakes around the house. But they decided to give all that up and live on a farm far from the city, where they had to carry water from a borehole to wash clothes and use for bathing. They collected rainwater in tanks, which they purified and used for drinking and cooking. They had no electricity, so they used paraffin lamps and a coal stove. Their home was a simple wood and iron building. But the most agonizing fact was that the house was surrounded by trees and bushes where there were many snakes of all kinds. Kastuba had conquered her fear of snakes, but Bapuji was very afraid of them. Yet, unfazed, he chose to move to this place and conquer his fear. This place was named the Phoenix Settlement. Bapuji, Kastuba, and his 3 sons, the 4th one was born at the settlement, moved from the comforts of the city to live among the poorer people in this area. Bapuji invited his friends and other family members to join him in this place. They all built their simple homes on this farm and started a big family. This is where I was born 36 years later in 1940. By then, the land was converted into vegetable gardens, fruit orchards, and a cow stable. But there the snakes continue to show up around the house and in the fields. They still show up to this day, even though there are many families living here. My mother went on with Bapuji's story. She told me that despite his fear, Bapuji and some of his friends would sleep out on the veranda every evening in the summer months. There was a pleasant, cool breeze out there in the open. They slept on the floor on mats and covered themselves with a sheet. I said to my mother, God must be taking care of Bapuji and his friends by keeping the snakes away. No, exclaimed my mom. One night, while Bapuji was sleeping alone on the veranda, a snake slithered onto the veranda. Bapuji saw it coming towards him. He remained still and allowed the snake to slither over him and across the veranda into the bush. My mom went on to say, Bapuji told his family that he learned on that day that one's fears are in the mind. Your thoughts make you afraid. You imagine that the snake will attack you. You imagine that it would be painful and you may die. But when you experience it, you realize that the fear in the mind is far greater than what actually takes place. He told them that the poor snake too was afraid of him as he was of it. He said that he saw the snake will only attack us if it felt threatened. So, by remaining completely still and keeping his fears in check, he was able to reassure the snake that he was not going to harm it. The snake slithered away peacefully. I saw how that day, Bapuji was able to conquer his fear. As for me, every time I felt fear rising up in my mind, I asked my mom to tell me this story. But I am still not brave to discard my fear of snakes. But that does not stop me from going to Phoenix Settlement regularly.